Hello, I'm Raynor. Welcome to another episode of Raynor's Guitar Digest. Yay! So today I'm going to share with you all one important and possible reason why your chord transition is still slow. Okay, so as we know, chords are the building blocks of songs that we play on guitar. So as a beginner, right, before we attempt that particular awesome song, we definitely have to learn to press those chords that appear in the song first, correct? So some chords are easy and some chords are hard. Yeah, we all know that, right? So learning to master pressing any particular chord is just the initial step. Okay, so you learn to master all the chords in that song. Learn how to press them. It's just the initial step. So other than also mastering the plucking patterns, strumming patterns, or even solo finger style, intro, interlude, or outro of that song, right? Many beginners, okay, that get stuck, especially in chord transition or changing from one chord to another, even if you already remember moving which fingers when changing any two chords. So, and going through hours and days of practice, and yet there's still no significant improvement. So what's wrong? What's the problem? So what step did you actually miss? What is the important factor that contributes to you getting stuck in changing chords on time? Okay, so from my experience as a guitar teacher, okay, a handful of my students, right, they get too tense up when they change chord that they forget to move one important limb of your body lah. That means there's your arm, your left arm, and your wrist. Okay, they forget to move their arm and wrist when changing chords. Okay, so they get so tense up that they forget to move their arm and their wrist. Okay, so when you're changing chords, right, you need to give your fingers, your left hand fingers, you need to give them space, right? Especially when you release from the previous chord and press down again for the next chord. Correct or not? So, but they also need to be placed at certain angles and position so as to be strategically near to the positions of the next chord fingerings. Yeah. So when some of my beginners students, right, they change chord, they just move their fingers and not their arms and wrists, right, they do not move at all. Okay, this definitely will make your chord changing slow down so much, right? Because your finger movement and distance are limited by your arms and wrists in a locked position, since they are attached to them, correct? Okay, that is logically right. So, example. Okay, let's do an example to prove my point, to tell you how what's happening here. So let's say I change from a C chord to a G chord. Okay, without moving my left hand arm and the wrist, it will look like this. For example, C chord. This is a C chord. I want to change to my G chord, but let's say, imagine I'm very tense up. I lock my arm and my wrist. So I change it in this way. So I'm barely only changing just my fingers only. Okay, you notice that my arm is not moving, it's locked. My wrist is also quite locked in the position. So I'm very tense up. So I change to a G chord like this. Okay, so your fingers they can't turn to their position fast enough because they are limited by your locked wrist and arm. So now if I twist my left arm outwards and my wrist turning inwards, right, my fingers get to the G chord position so much easier. So okay, I'll demo and see how you observe. Okay, so C chord to G chord, and I twist my arm outwards and my wrist inwards. See, I change to a G chord. See, it's very intuitive actually. Your arm is actually moving outwards as you change your chord to a G. Look at my arm. My arm is moving according when I change my chord. Because my G chord, most of all the notes here, right, they are not on the first fret. They are on the second and the third fret. So your fingers definitely have to move a bit more towards the second and the third fret. So that's why you can't be in this position. That means in the C chord position is first fret, second fret, third fret. You can't be in this position when you change to a G chord. You have to move a bit. So it's a bit like I turn diagonally to the left. My arm move outwards and my wrist move inwards in this way, so that you can change faster. If you don't move, you lock your arm, right, you change to a G chord like this without moving your arm, because of your locked arm and wrist, right, it gets very awkward and gets very slow. Okay, so the next, let's look at another example. Okay, let's say I change from an F to a D minor. Okay, F to a D minor without moving my arms and wrists, it will look like this. F chord to a D minor. Okay, again, F chord to a D minor, F chord to a D minor with my arm and wrist lock. Okay, so notice that first thing, notice that F has many finger positions at the lower strings nearer to the bass. Then D minor has most of the fingering positions at the treble notes, at the higher treble notes here. Okay. So if you lock your arm and your wrist, right, your finger will be so awkward and slow to move to D minor, because when you move to D minor, right, your fingers, your wrists are not moving, your arm is not moving, right. The position here, the space here is very limited for your fingers to move, so you get very slow. So in this case, right, how do I move my arm and my wrist so as to change from F to D minor properly? So I do this. I start with F, so this is a positive demonstration. F to D minor, I move my arm inward. Notice how I move my arm behind my left arm. Okay, I show you from the side view. So this is the F chord. Okay, I start with F chord. Now I want to move to my D minor. I move my arm inwards. Look, I move my arm inwards so that I have space. Okay, my arm, of course, and my wrist will be facing outwards lah. Okay, see, F to D minor. F to D minor with my arm movement. If I do without my arm movement, with my arm lock, one more time, F to D minor. You see, I have to stretch my fingers so hard. I have to spend so much more effort to move my fingers up. Okay, so you get the idea of arm and wrist movement now and how important it is, right? So actually, this is supposed to be intuitive and natural body movement. But as I said earlier, right, many students, right, and beginners, they get so tense up that their arms and hands don't respond as intuitively as they are supposed to be. Okay, so once they get tense up in the beginning, right, they will continue this habit, and so they will not be able to respond intuitively as in terms of the arm and the wrist. So now, right, it's time for you to remember to learn to relax your body first, and observe if your arms and wrists are moving accordingly when changing chords. Okay, start to observe yourself, because if let's say you are changing chords still very slowly, right, observe if your arms are moving. They should respond as per position of the chord. See, for example, C to G, you are moving a bit diagonal, so you are actually twisting, you are actually moving your forearm, your arm outside in this way diagonally. C to G, okay, C to G, okay, then F to D minor, moving inwards like that. So there's a lot of movement in your arm and wrist. You can move your arm, outward with your wrist facing inward. You can move your arm backward with your wrist facing outward for certain chords, and then you can twist your arm inside so that you can press G, things like your G chord. Yeah, so you have to move your arm around. It's not just limited to your fingers only. Remember this. Don't lock your arm and your wrist. Okay, alright, that's all for this video. Hope you learned something new, and remember to subscribe, follow, like, or comment below if you have any questions. Okay, thank you and see you in the next video. Bye bye.